Hello, and welcome to the Flowers and the Wild. I am your host, Ajna Flowers, and today with us, I have a very special guest. This is Carrie Ann McCormick. She is a amazing writer. She just is this multifaceted human being that just so has so enriched my life and um came into my life during the part of my journey that grief had overwhelmed both of us. We, our Dianne, as we call her, or my Dianne, who my best friend that I met in sixth grade, and Carrie, were also super good friends. They taught together, and so in the process of Diane's brain cancer diagnosis and her passing and all of that, Carrie and I made a connection, and I just felt like once I started the podcast that she was someone that you all have to hear her story and know her because she is just such an amazing human being. Carrie, thank you so much for being here, and it's been a little while since we connected, so it feels like it's just a reunion. I just love it so much. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking me, and I'm so glad to be here. I'm glad to see you again, and I'm glad to
Right.
hear that you're doing good in the world. You're spreading love and information and your authentic self, and I think that's what it's about.
Right. And it's like when you are thinking about living your authentic self, it's scary because you're like, there's going to be so many things that throughout my life I have shied away from or hidden the shadow of, you know, hidden it there in that shadow because somebody somewhere, whether I know them or they see me on social media, might say something or might have some kind of an opinion of their own about whatever. However, once you're just like, whether they know it or not, that is a part of who I am. It is a part of, and a very real, consistent part of my practice. So, this is who I am. And the people who know me and love me and know my soul have always known this to some extent. The people who are like, it's like, well, I don't know that you ever really knew me. You knew that public persona. You knew the person I was under the life mask I was put on, that was put on my face at birth to make it so that I fit in to this family, this society, this culture, this world. And by the time we have any cognitive memories, that mask has been there. So that is the only identity that we believe at that time and through however long it takes for it to be like, wait a minute. That that's not true. That does not ring true in my very being anymore. So what else have I just believed because I was taught to believe that, or as a child, I perceived that was how I was supposed to act in a situation that perhaps it wasn't, but my perception and my already instilled from some other place, my desire for perfection from before I can remember, it all just turned into this chaotic, you know? And I was trying to keep track of who do I act here? Who do I act here? And if I was going to go someplace, how would somebody who enjoyed this activity, what would they say? How would they act? How would they sit? And I would literally do, okay, so if I'm on a couch, I could sit like this. I'll be comfortable and I can let people, if somebody says something clever, I'll just, because I've watched, I've acted, I know how you're supposed to act when you enjoy something, but the whole time in my head I'm screaming, I don't want to be here. I just want to go home. I just want to go home. Oh my gosh, you're just so funny. I can't believe, I just want to thank you so much for inviting me here tonight. Why did I come tonight? Is the constant. And now I'm just like, if I'm to the place that I'm stressed out about going somewhere, I'm not going. And COVID opened up a whole a whole bunch of permission to say, no, I'm not leaving my house. And people who have a high anxiety, a lot of people I've talked to were like, I was so calm during that because that's what we are practicing for. And so when it happened, it's just like, yes. And not that I wanted people to die, but can we just, how long can we do this for? How long? Because it's so magical. But then I'd never wanted to go out in public again. And now, here we are doing a podcast. I'm talking as I usually do. So now, I would just like to have you share whatever you have learned through your life. What is the one thing that made you think, wow, if I'd have known that during this process, it would have made it, at least I would have understood it better, or it might have even made it easier and the process shortened.
Well, there's really so much to say because just in your describing the act of I call it sort of shape shifting or changing my embodiment depending on where I am.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge lesson in itself that I could be true to myself and not wear like this full mask all the time. And that those people that were for me, that would know my soul, as you will, would be for me. And I was actually saving myself a lot of time and a lot of heartache and a lot of grief by showing up as myself. It takes a lot less energy, and I can use my energy in other places. So,
Exactly.
in a
And you don't even
nutshell,
have to do anything. You just have to show up. And the people that are not for your best, that may not have your highest good in mind, will just start falling away. Or
sure.
something will happen that you're like, this person, I had some feeling, and now the universe has given me confirmation that this will not be someone that continues on this journey with me. I love
Sure.
them. I hope they have an amazing life. But as far as their role in my life, it is not edifying me in a way that feels genuine.
Right. I feel like I've learned. So another thing that would have saved me so much time is to understand that, I don't remember the expression, but it's like, some people are there for a reason, a season. And if we are growing alongside each other, if we're contributing positively to one another's lives and that growth, then we'll be in alignment for as long as we'll be in alignment. And some people are lifers, right? I've had
Right.
a history of having like really great, wonderful friendships. Now, I never have like a lot of friends at the same time. I never have like a
Right.
friend group, but a vast majority of the people that I really connect with, there are times and circumstances where we drift apart from one another, but I honestly could not count on all my fingers and toes how many people that I could contact in a jam that could talk me through it or help me through it.
Right. That would
And
circle
I
the
think that's amazing.
wagons. That would circle the wagons.
Yep,
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
and another thing I think is that I learned that Ravina, my best friend that does the podcast, we do the podcast together, that we learned is if someone says to you, if you ever need help, if you ever need anything, regardless of what you have been taught to believe about that, it is not rude or wrong to reach out to that person if you need help. And you know that there are other people around that may not have expressed that vocally to you, but you know that if you needed anything, you have these people that if they can't help you personally, they will know someone who probably can.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And so
I,
those that I like to turn that around from I need help to I use that as a healing modality to teach me that it is not wrong to put my needs as the priority over how someone may feel about me needing help or asking. Because if they have a problem, they are not the person you thought they were, because they will either help you or they will find someone who can. Because that
yeah,
is what we
yeah,
do.
yeah. I'm queen of like blasting to the masses on Facebook when I am in need of something,
Oh,
you
like
know?
there were things you'd be like, where would I find this? And how I need this service. Where do I find somebody that can help me edit? Or I remember those things. And it's like, I love that. That, it's like, and those people, if somebody responds to you, they want to help because all of us know we've seen someplace at some point in our life that we could have helped that we did not feel like it was something we were necessarily being called to do, or it's something that after we chose not to do it, we're like, oh, missed opportunity.
Yes, I once heard, and as a recovering type A, um, independent, strong, I can do it myself. I once heard that when you don't accept the gift of help from someone, you deny the giver the pleasure of being of service. And that
Right.
just shifted my perspective in a huge way.
Well, because I know for myself that, you know, I I rarely wait for somebody to ask me for help because have you read the book The Noticer?
No.
Oh my goodness, you've got to. I'll send you the info on it when we're done. But he talks about becoming someone who notices what's on the fringe of life. The things that other people just walk by and don't even see. Start becoming a noticer. And so, and which is also a trauma response, because, and I don't even know where it developed, but I learned to read the room. I learned very early that if I did this thing and it was good, I was loved and they were happy, with me. If I did this thing, there was punishment. So, right there is where that shadow and our self make that divide because it's like, well, as a little kid, you're like, obviously, I'm going to do the thing that makes them happy and makes me feel loved. And when you're 4, 5, 6, whatever, that's pretty easy to do the right things because they're not difficult things to just, I mean, it is at that age, but generally. But as you start getting older, what happens is it's not as easy to just do that. So you then start doing these shadow things, just not while you're living this part of your life. And so it gets to, I mean, it was like this part was light, this part was dark, and I spent a number of years trying to figure out how do I want to do a trigger warning. As you know, I always forget to put that at the beginning. How do I kill the dark part without snuffing out the light? Which, as we know, is, well, that's the paradox. You
Yes, and I
cannot
hear a
you
lot
cannot lose
about,
one without losing the other.
right. And so I have begun to understand that it's really more of an integration, a
Oh,
weaving,
absolutely.
because we all have those dark parts.
Right.
And truly, everybody has a version of you. Every different person you meet has a different version of you in their mind. And they
Right.
don't they don't always know the behind the scenes. They don't know the
Right.
thoughts that other
Right.
experiences that you have. And it's their version of you is often a projection of
Of something
themselves.
in their own life too.
Mhm.
Yeah. But also, if you when you start living that real, deliberate, raw, authentic life, I love the fact that pretty much everybody that meets me at from New Year's Eve on will pretty much tell the exact same story
Yeah.
because I'm not pretending to be and anybody other than who I am. And we went somewhere and I had given them the little flyer for the podcast. And anytime I start when I do that, then I can't stop talking about it. So there were several, a few people, and this elderly gentleman says to me, "Okay, well, thanks for coming in." And so I'm like, "Oh, I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just love talking about it so much. I get so caught up in it that I just forget that, you know, not everyone is as, enthralled with it as I am." So I went out and but I had that sick feeling of, "Oh, why? Why do you have to talk all the time? Why can't you just here, the cliff notes, the little thing is on the back. That's all you have to say. Here's the podcast. You can read the back and see a little bit of what it's about. Walk away." But then I thought, you know what? From now on, I'm going to stay and talk until somebody says to me, "Okay, well, thanks for coming in. You have given me an unknown time window that I am going to utilize until you tell me to get the hell out of there. Don't call the cops. I will leave. Just say, okay, thanks." But I do it in the line at any store I'm at. There's something because I can't help but share this that has happened, that has been serendipitously, that's the word, serendipitously orchestrated throughout my life, that I can look at the very worst, horrible, tragic event that I ever thought I could experience and think, "Oh, I am so thankful that I went through that because I would not have the compassion. I would not have the grace and the mercy and to be able to look behind the imperfection and still be able to see that beautiful thing, regardless of what else the world sees." And that's not excusing anything. It's saying we are all imperfect. But that imperfection, the whole point of imperfection on anything, and we miss it in our humanness, is to draw our eye back to the perfect thing we have stopped looking at because we know what it's going to look like because it has looked that way every single time we see it now. So it is now just something that, yep, beautiful roses. Oh, but then there's a brown petal that start showing up, and we're like, what's up with that? Oh, there must be something wrong with whatever. And there might be. However, the universe is saying, okay, dumbass, but you're a pretty dumbass. Um, I brought you to this place for you to remember that this, this, this is still beautiful. Your essence, your being, that radiance that you are, that no one else has but you, is not overshadowed by oftentimes what we perceive as imperfections that until we bring it to someone's attention, they have not even noticed about us. This is my bugaboo. This is my thing that when I see a picture, I don't even watch the video back when I'm editing if the voice is good, because I don't want me looking at something on myself and believing it is more important for me to not post the video because of how I look than it being the most important thing to post because of what was said.
Right.
So,
Yeah, about the imperfections, it's like every rose, it's not just another beautiful rose, it's a different beautiful rose, right? And
right,
it's going to look different. It's going to have different thorns. It's going to have a little bit different color. It's going to have a little bit of brown, perhaps. But it's also going back to what you said about reading the room. I'm that person that, I'm it's always a really good student, and I'd be in class and I'd be like, oh, 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 oh. And being a noticer, naturally, I'm like, wait a second. I can't monopolize this. There's a whole group of people here that are trying to learn, and I I know this, and I don't have to raise my hand and
right,
prove that I know it. I can sit back,
right, because,
zip my
yeah,
lip, and let somebody else.
because
So
you
it's like,
realize at that point, it isn't because you want to share the knowledge. You have stopped yourself from needing to prove that you know the answer and then get everyone's approval that you know the answer. And when it clicks in your brain, I no longer want to perform for
mm,
any reason. And when I start that, I'm like, pull that back. Nope, you are not in a play, Ajna. You are actually living your amazing life. So we don't pretend. And if you feel like at any point or place you have to pretend in any way, it's probably time to take a nap.
it's not my place.
No. So,
Not my place. So yeah,
but
when I read the energy in a room and I realize that my words will be wasted, for whatever reason, I'm like, they don't want to hear it. They don't need to hear it. It's something they need to figure out for themselves. I just sit back and listen.
right. And it's like when you have started talking and then you realize that nobody's really that into it. This is what I tell myself. I got to say something. And I got to say something pretty profound if they were paying attention. So, whether they acted like they wanted to hear what I had to say or not, there are a few options. Maybe they didn't hear it all because they don't care. Maybe they're religious and the way I was presenting it felt, woo woo, potentially. Or perhaps I said something that they're now sitting there going,
Hmm.
I want her out of here
Hmm.
now. I don't
Oh,
like the fact that she just called me out in my place and she's just standing there like it was no big deal. So, hey, thanks for coming in. I don't know that. I know for myself that there have been times that that is exactly the way I have acted when something has irritated my trauma or my bullshit and I don't want to deal with it. So I'm just going to be mad at you because you're the one that brought it to my attention again.
mm.
And how
Yeah,
often
I
have we
thought I
done
was hiding
that?
my shadow and you just called me out on it. So now I realize that somebody else might be able to see that. And I don't like that
Well,
because I worked so hard to
yes,
hide
you
that for
worked. I've
whatever
done such a
reason.
great job of hiding all of that. How dare you, someone who is a complete stranger, walk in with this vibe that is like, whoa. Because I know I'm a lot when I walk in somewhere. I dress so that someone is going to remember me. And that used to be so that it would be like, well, I'm in for the attention. Now it's like, I want someone to notice me because they have something inside them that I need to talk to. So I want
Well,
to present myself in such a way that people cannot help but say, oh, wow, that outfit, where did you, whatever, because that is that's my icebreaker. That is
sure.
their first impression of Ajna flowers. So I want that to be something that when they walk away, that if they do start losing their memory, that is one of the last memories they lose.
Well, I think it gives people permission.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing is I would see people who dress like I do now, and I think, oh, I would just love so much to just. And now I'm like, I will say to Jack, is this a Missy outfit or is this a Ajna Flowers outfit? And he'll be like, well, it's got. So then if I want to have, if I'm, want, and I definitely prefer Ajna Flowers clothes. she she has such a great style that Missy tried. Well, she had a good style too, just not Ajna's. Definitely not Ajna, because Ajna doesn't care. It's like, oh, so I'm in a town somewhere in Idaho that has problems with, like these kind of things on my sweater. Well, I'm probably gonna have to stop right here on this corner and pump some gas at this point. Because I'm not afraid. I have faced such horrible, suffocating, blinding darkness in my life that, I mean, taking this physical body is the worst thing. That doesn't change my eternal soul. That doesn't change, other than me now being part of it again. That doesn't change my relationship to all consciousness. So I'm not afraid, because the worst you can do is what? I get to go hang out with all consciousness, not as my individual piece of chocolate, but as the whole chocolate bar again? Okay, that sounds so much better to me than what I perceived I was supposed to believe about heaven as a
Mm.
child. Because it was not someplace that I was terrified. I was terrified that that the rapture was gonna come, and it was not. I found no comfort, no peace, no, just nothing other than just a debilitating fear of, well, for one, being left behind. I would sleep with my foot up over whatever husband it was, over their leg at night, in my terrified brain, thinking, well, at least if the rapture comes, I'll know when they are gone. And I had told my daughter that, and she's like, she just started laughing, and she's like, I'm like, what's so funny about that? She said, I just think it's funny that you thought they would be raptured before you would. So I'm like, true, true. Yeah, they probably should have been flopping their leg up over me. But but anyway, it's like I don't have to worry about any of that at this point, because I know that I don't have to worry about it. I know my
Right.
soul is eternal. I know that anything that I worry about is my human condition prompting me to worry about something that my soul has never been touched by.
Mm.
Because it is that mask life, it is that persona that received the trauma, the abuse, the assault. It is that life mask that we grew up believing was our identity that already came into the game feeling like not enough and too much. So that is going to be the default of our brain until we say, but what do I believe? What in my deepest knowing, who do I know myself to be? And does it match any of the things that were that any of the things that were implied or spoken that put a negative spin on my being? Those weren't mine to begin with. Some that was planted there. So what do I know to be the facts of my soul? Is eternal. It wasn't ruined. You can't damage it beyond repair. It's unconditional love, that it is just waiting for you to stop being a human that hates you. Because your soul, and you have to get to the place that you feel about yourself the way the universe, higher power, your source, and your soul feel about you. Because they have never not thought you were the most incredible thing that has ever existed forever. That's how we have, and that is not being vain. It's not conceited. It's not being selfish. It is saying, I never even thought that there was an option to actually love myself unconditionally. I thought that was just my job to show other people unconditional love. But it was never my calling to show that to myself. Because I can be so kind and caring and compassionate to other people and be the cruelest, most judgmental, vilest voice in my head that has said, because if somebody says something that hurts my feelings really bad, I am guaranteed, if I let my brain default there, to prove that I can hurt my feelings more than anybody else in the world. To the point where it's like,
shield.
why do you even think your existence is anything other than being selfish? And that is where people are like, when you get to that place, the person that is in that moment thinking, I make these people's lives worse. How can somebody say that me removing myself from a situation that I bring nothing but sorrow and heartache and drama, how can anybody convince me that me leaving that is more selfish than me staying in that situation that feels like I don't belong, that I don't fit, that I'm too much and I'm not enough? That doesn't feel selfish. At that moment, it feels like, I mean, I've even said sobbing, not sobbing, but you know, when you get that, the tears just running and whatever you're wearing gets soaked and it doesn't stop. And I just think, I will say, even out loud in the midst of it, I don't have any other choice. If I love these people, I don't have any other choice than to free them from me. I need them to know that I love them enough that I need to take myself out of their lives to make it better. I'm not trying to destroy them. However, when you think about it in your own mind. It makes a lot of sense. You can justify it and be like, not selfish, whatever. But when you are watching someone else, a mother, experience her losing her daughter, it's like it changes. It doesn't, because I have mental illnesses that make me feel like I don't want to live at times. That doesn't go away, but it makes me stop and be so grateful that I am getting to see the aftermath of, not for her, but I am grateful that I am paying enough attention to how her life was so devastatingly altered. I get to see what my people would experience if I took myself out of their lives because I thought they felt some way about me, that they probably reacted to me in a very human way. And because I'm in such a fragile point at state, I took it as something that made me feel like they would be better off if I wasn't there.
Mm.
But I don't feel that. I don't feel that regularly. I'm not going to say that those thoughts don't, because it's almost like it just has become, at some point during the day, it floats through my head because it just is always, it just is, you know. However, I now, when it starts to do that, I'm like, I don't think we need to go there. You know, you're having a bad day, whatever. And I'll even say to myself sometimes, let's just, let's just calm down. Do your breathing, your 4 inhale, 8 exhale, so that your body, you're physically telling your body it's safe to slow down. Because as you know, anytime you exhale longer than your inhale, it starts to get your nervous system, your whole body system back in a place of, okay, I freaked out, but we have this breathing going, and I know, okay, that I don't have to do that fight, flight, fawn thing. I can just stop it right there and be like, nope, we don't go there anymore. Because that is nothing that the universe or your soul has ever felt about you, or your husband, or your best friend, or numerous people that I have assumed wouldn't even care. So I've really tried also concentrating on the millions of great things about myself and what people have told me and said than those 3 people that said something negatively or in a tone that maybe was not as civil as I thought it should be. Because I'll be the first one to say that I know there are times that people will say stuff, and depending on where I'm at in the mood I'm in, either I'll be like, take it as a joke, or, they'll be like, I really wish I hadn't come to work today. I don't do that anymore, but I did. I mean, it was just like, if you caught me, I could be the nicest person, or I was like yelling at you for trying to cut into the line when, the day before, I'm like, did you want to, I'm fine, you can come in. And when that happened, I was like, you're crazy. You're crazy, girl. That's how it made me feel. Because I'm like, that's not you. And how much longer really would you have been standing here if you'd have just let him go? But for some reason that day, I was like, that is not right. We had to walk all the way around to the huge maze line, and they're right there trying to. Like, yeah, and you're almost 58 years old, so And they're
Still happens to me in
and
traffic.
they're in their 20s. So I'm just like, yeah, so you just like look like a real crabby old lady right now. So good for
Get
you,
off my
Missy,
lawn.
because that was not Ajna. That was, and she probably wasn't even wearing Ajna's clothes that day. So, you know,
I
possibly the
once had
reason.
Yeah, I once had a nurse who said to me, and this was in a respite center, so I've got my own mental illness candy store, but she said, "Oh, you the question specifically was, have you ever wanted to harm yourself?" And to this day, like I am an anomaly, like she said, and I understand that. Sure, I isolate and I pull back when I know that I've got a lot of dark clouds going on.
Right.
But then I remember that people want to help and sometimes they don't know how, and maybe they're not noticers, right?
Right.
And so I am where I am, and sometimes it's all love and light and
And
talking about
sometimes I then feel
decorating
bad
my
because I'm
apartment.
like, I haven't talked to that person. I mean, it was like we've talked and all of this, and then it's like something where it's like, I think, not really even realizing how much I've isolated, and my phone will be like, this message was sent a week ago. Did you want to reply still? And I'm like, but the friends that I have now understand that about me, and they will send me when I go quiet every day. They'll send me something, a little message, just want you to know I'm thinking about you, and I hope not ever. Well, you just need to get your shit together, and why aren't you talking to me? Because now I don't even feel like we're friends. And I've had people like that, so I have stopped allowing people into my circle simply because of their position in my life. Say, for instance, just because someone's in my family, they are not in that sacred circle by default anymore. That used to be my practice, and that proved to be a poor practice for both of us. For both of us. And my daughter and I are not speaking at this point. And as I brought up, when I was talking to my son, we didn't speak for 5 years because I do feel like oftentimes in those close type of relationships, you need some kind of a relationship break, especially if, for instance, with my son and I, we were connecting through our addiction. And
Mhm.
that was what made us close, was our day drinking and our addiction. And so when I quit drinking, which will be 6 years in October, October 3rd will be 6 years. Um, that because that was how we connected. We didn't. And so there was a disagreement, and he left Montana and went to Colorado, and he reached out to me after 5 years, a year ago, right around this time, and I had not seen his face since before he left until he was on the podcast with me for all that time. So it was a lovely, just a wonderful time with him, and just he went to rehab, and he's just so he just understands. He understands it. It's like, yeah, it's hard work and it's not fun, and there are days that, compared to how the substance, the drug of choice, made me feel, and how life without it feels sometimes, feels really shitty. However, I do not ever want to have to get my body back to producing its own endorphins, and doing not finding calm boring. Not feeling like peaceful is restlessness. And, because when you are coming out of that, peace and calm feels super boring, because whatever your substance has been, it's made those endorphins, because your own endorphins are lazy, and they're like, well, why are we going to do anything if you're putting this in there? We're just going to. So then they close, and those substance endorphins open. And so when you try to quit, because those natural endorphins are dormant now, those other endorphins, the only way for you to open them is to use again. And so when you start to come down and you start feeling that withdrawal, those artificial endorphins are like, what's going on? Why? Okay. So then that's when you're like, I don't want to do this, but I just don't feel like I have to. And just that feeling of relentless, I'm not going to do this, but in the back of your mind, you're like, I absolutely am going to do this. I don't know who it is exactly that I'm trying to fool when I say, this is the last time I'm ever going to do it, because I know that I'm not going to stop. I know I can't stop at this point until something happens that it is worse. The outcome is way worse than feeling bored for 6 months to a year till my own endorphins come back and realize that that is their job to do that. However, this is the thing. Once those artificial endorphins have been created, they never go away. If you do not feed them, they, like your natural endorphins, will go dormant. So, but anything that a place, a smell, anything, if your brain associates that thing with that substance use, those gates will open up and be like, I need it now. And I believe, and I would assume there's probably studies and research on this, but I feel like that is why so often people who relapse shortly after coming out of rehab and the early stage of recovery, is their body has been without this substance for 30 days, however long. However, they're like, well, because we have this game that we play with ourselves. There's like, well, now that I have gone off for this amount of time, I've proven I don't have to do it and I can stop. So it won't hurt if I just, I'm going to go celebrate getting out of rehab. And so it won't hurt to have a drink or whatever. But what happens is those endorphins that substance created then opens up. And that first time, it's like it opens it up. Well, then after that, your brain and those endorphins want what you were using right before you went into rehab. So your body can handle this much. Your brain is telling your body that you want this much. And there is no way to stop feeling like you want this much until you do it. However, your body now has no way of dealing with that because there's been no buildup. There has just been this flood of this substance that now decimates a sober body.
Mm.
I mean, you hear
And
about
I don't
that
think it matters what the substance is. It
It
could
does
be human
not.
interaction.
It could be anything that you have placed the priority on that shouldn't be placed as a priority, especially over yourself, your well-being, and the well-being of people you love.
Right?
But
Yeah.
most importantly, your well-being. It is our responsibility to take care of this body the way we take care of our newborn child.
Mm-hmm.
We give it everything. We nurture it. We love it. We talk to it in a kind, sweet way. And when we are holding that little baby and we look in the mirror and we either think or say the cruelest things, and it is that little 7-year-old Missy that I am saying that to. It's that little inner child that believed that there were things that I needed to fix that I couldn't ever fix, so I wouldn't ever be who I should be. So I have to remember that she runs the show a lot of the times. And my son and I were talking about that too. If you look at certain situations, you can be like, oh, he was like, yeah, I threw a teenage tantrum at 36 years old. That was a teenage tantrum. She's like, because that's, around the time he'd really actively started using, and it's like you stunt your growth
Oh yeah.
when something
Oh yeah.
traumatic or you do something like that. It stunts you, and you have to reparent that part of you that got stopped, that makes those rash, impulsive, stupid decisions that as an adult you're like, I don't feel like I should even be thinking about wanting to make that decision considering the rest of my life and where I'm at. So
Yeah.
now it's time for me to be like, okay, well, then that little 7-year-old girl, and another time that little 12-year-old girl, we're going to work through this because we're going to look at what it actually the situation was, not what you were perceiving as a child's view and mind, which makes a huge difference in a lot of. There were some really bad situations that there is no way to paint it pretty. But there are other situations that I have thought about as an adult that I'm like, yeah, I probably would have acted that. I would have reacted that exact same way in that situation. But as a little child looking at it, I'm like, and not knowing this adult situation at all. Well, obviously, my parents are getting a divorce because, my mom walked out of the restaurant after my dad said something that I'm sure probably made her mad enough that she thought, if I don't just walk out right now, I'm going to punch him in the throat. And me as a little kid was like, well, she's never coming back. That's not a trauma. That's not a realized trauma for me to have to heal from at this point, because as an adult I'm like, absolutely. And aren't we glad that she walked out of the restaurant? Because if she had punched him in the throat, that would have been way more traumatic, I'm sure, at some point, whether it was just seeing that happen or the police showing up and my mom being arrested. So as a little child, totally different view of my mom just being like, I'm going to make this situation calm down right now.
Yeah, when you were talking, it made me think about like some of my own trauma. And for the longest time, like when I was a teenager, I would look back at particular things that had happened when I was younger. And I, I guess just as a trauma response, I was minimizing them. And it got me through, right? Um, but then as I knew more, um, I did better. And then I realized, well, actually, yeah, it was really shitty. But
Right.
I have a choice now whether or not I let it define me. And I
Well,
can
it's your
look at it through a
perspective.
different
It's the
lens, right?
perspective of it.
And so I mean, there were times that I was pretty tender about some things, but that's natural. You have to go through that. But again, an anomaly, I guess, but I never let it sink like soul deep, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
And
I was like,
oh, well, as a in a logical understanding of you saying that, yes. I because I've had I understand that there are people that have been able to do that, or that's what it has happened for them. I as a that I can't even fathom how that would feel not to have everything feel soul deep. But it's not soul deep. It's that trauma that presented itself as my broken soul
Mm.
that I am that I'm focusing on, not that eternal soul that's like, we can get through this. There's just stuff. And it's nobody's fault that you didn't learn these coping mechanisms, because they didn't learn them either. Your parents didn't learn them. Their
Right.
parents didn't. Their parents didn't. So at some point, somebody has to show up that is eventually going to be like, we're not, this is not necessary to keep this going through the generations. We don't
Well, and
have
that's the
to.
thing.
Yeah,
That's the thing. Like we have those experiences and they shape us in good and bad ways, good and bad.
exactly.
But as as a person who believes and has always believed that I have some kind of higher purpose,
Right.
um, I know that the shaping that those experiences had is also part of my work. And it's
Oh,
also what
right.
allows me to
Oh,
see other things from a different perspective, a
oh,
perspective I would never
absolutely.
have had without that experience, shitty as it
Exactly.
was.
Right. And that's where, you can look back and see how it was all serendipitously orchestrated, because had those situations not taken place, because I ask myself this, if I could go back and go over everything that caused me harm, trauma, whatever, if I could go back and take out the one thing that I would say had the most impact, what about Ajna flowers are you willing to give up today
Mhm.
in order to, I mean, you've got to trade. You've got to trade that out, because if you don't experience that particular thing, this part of Ajna flowers doesn't exist. So that doesn't feel like a fair trade, that I have to
Yeah.
give up any of Ajna flowers to erase something that literally became my lesson, my survival guide. I wouldn't
Right.
change.
And
And I remember at one point I was like, there are so many things. If I could just, and at this point I'm like, I mean, it was horrible. And I think about them like in depth. That was pretty bad. That was, I wouldn't want to go through it again. But no, I wouldn't want to be less understanding or judgmental in any of those areas. And the only way, and I'm not saying that people have to experience it on the very real deep level I did, but I do feel like people who have experienced those things will always understand it in a different way than simply a very kind, compassionate person will understand it,
well, I
or
think
someone who
about the
isn't.
capacity that I have to love and
Right.
to have, the compassion that I have. I wouldn't have had it had I not had those
Right.
adverse experiences. And I think for me, what helped me work through it and get to a place where I don't cry, when I talk about those
Right.
experiences,
Right.
for instance, is that I sure there are things I wish had never happened, but it's not it's not possible to go back in time
Right.
in this lifetime to
Right.
rid myself of those. But what I can release is I can unattach from the outcome I thought I was supposed to
Right.
have, how it was
Well, and the thing
supposed.
is, yes, yes. And the thing is it turns the pointlessness of the situation into a purpose when it when you realize that that was not necessarily something for you to experience because you're a bad person and you deserve to be treated like shit. It was because there will come a point in your life that you having experienced that the point, the purpose of that is so that when you are presented with that story in somebody else's life, you went through boot camp. You know that you know the lessons that you learned from that, and hopefully something along the way when you turned it from just being this tragic event into this is a life altering lesson, something shifts. And it all
I
just is
mean,
like, and even the bad, it's like the ocean comes in and it goes out. Regardless, the universe ebbs and flows, regardless. And if you try to grab in the ocean, you're going to drown potentially. If you relax and float and just let the water or the universe envelop you, you still are letting the universe take care of things you can't control. The only difference is you're aware of the fact that it's none of your business if it's something you can't control. So
right.
the difference is me feeling like I have to do something and me realizing that I just have to be, because the majority of things aren't in my control anyway. And this is the only thing that I can honestly say I have control over how I react, or if I respond, or if I hurt, because of what somebody said, or that is what I have control over. So why am I worried about finding the ways to control things I can't control and completely ignore the only thing I have control over? And when you get to the place that it's like, oh, yeah, so yeah, I guess that's who we're going to start working on, is controlling this that's mine. It's mine to control. And I've let everybody else do it because as humans, we think we have to be in everything. But we really only need to do this, and we will just be where we are supposed to be if we just be.
Well, and you talked about how having gone through certain things brings you to, you know, I forgot exactly how you said it, but what came to my mind was, okay, if I had this experience that allowed me to embody who I am in such a way that someone could then come to me and share, unbeknownst to them, what my history was, and share a similar experience with me, that puts me in a place to say me too. And that's all we want, is to be seen and
Right,
acknowledged for this thing that we're going through. And in
right,
27 years as an educator, I can tell you that more than 50 times, I've been able to be that person.
right,
So,
right. And logically thinking that it all, makes sense. But when our emotions start getting into things like that, it's like that, it takes such weird little, you know what I mean? So it's like,
oh, well,
the,
as I'm crying with this student, this particular one that I was thinking about, it was a sexual trauma. Um, I, I again gave her permission to hurt, right? And gave her permission to realize that in that moment I was sharing that hurt part of myself, but she also had, 364 other days that she knew me and knew me to be okay.
not, right, right. She saw you live that out, and now she understands what,
Hmm.
what the culmination of all of that was in who she was experiencing at that point.
Yeah, that she
Yeah.
was going to be able to move beyond it as
Right.
well in her
And
own
so
way.
often we, as isolators too, and people in general, we're going through something and we're like, Nobody else will understand anything. There can't be. So when those situations happen, I love it because it's like it gives validation to the fact that you are not alone. We
We're
are
not alone. That's right.
There's a large amount of people that are struggling with the very thing that you thought you were struggling with all by yourself, but by you being that little tiny bit vulnerable, you opened up this healing modality at that point.
Well, and we're not here to do this alone. We're to do this, side by side.
Right.
Um,
And independent,
Ram
being
Dass,
an
we're all just
independent, I
walking each
can,
other home.
right. And being independent in some ways is a very great, empowering, wonderful thing. But oftentimes, being a very independent person and woman specifically is, I have never been able to trust that someone will come through for me when I have asked them to do something for me, and I have been left humiliated, forgotten, felt unloved. And so, if I create a place that I am the only one that ever supplies and meets my needs, I will never be disappointed again.
I don't know. I've disappointed myself plenty of times.
But you know what I mean? Because
Right?
we do because
We think that it's an armor.
yeah. Yeah, it's just really interesting to me. But anyway, well, we should probably wrap this up, but I would really I want you to know that you have an open invitation and are absolutely welcome anytime that you would like to come join us on the Flowers in the Wild, Carrie. I just love you. Your soul is just, we're connected, and I just love you so much. And I know that our Dianne is just, she's so happy. She's so glad that she was able to bring our paths together. And what a beautiful testament to her life is this beautiful friendship that
Right.
we have.
And
So
how our trauma doesn't have to be all darkness, and that good
no,
can even come
it can
of
be the
that, of the
thing that
worst
shows
thing.
you where you need what you need to work on. That,
Mm,
if you are paying attention. But anyway, well, once
absolutely.
again, Carrie, I just am so thankful for you, and I just love talking with you. I could talk to you forever. So I am just so grateful that you joined us today, and I want to thank the listeners for being with us today on The Flowers in the Wild. I am your host, Ajna Flowers, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Missy. Love you.
Oh, honey, thank you.